Hi, my name is John Gambino, and I teach at North Shore Community College. And today we're going to be looking at applications of fractions. When doing problems involving applications of fractions, there are some critical steps that you should consider when you're doing these problems. The first step is to really understand the problem. You should read the problem very, very carefully and even draw a picture of the situation if it helps. Secondly, devise and implement a strategy to solve the problem. This may involve multiplication or division of fractions, or even addition or subtraction of fractions. So once we devise a strategy, we'll perform those calculations and then state the answer, including any units of measure in the problem. Third, we should check our answer at the end and estimate it to see if the answer is reasonable. Our first example has that it takes 16 24ths yards of ribbon to make a hair bow. How much ribbon is needed to make 8 bows? Well, we know we want to make 8 bows, and each one of those uses 16 24ths yards of ribbon. So the strategy here would be to multiply 16 24ths yards by the number of bows. So 16, no? Not work. In our first example, we have that it takes 16 24ths yards of ribbon to make a hair bow. The question is, how much ribbon is needed to make 8 bows? Well, we know if each bow takes 16 24ths yards of ribbon, we can multiply that fraction by 8 to get the total amount of ribbon needed to make all 8 bows. So taking 16 24ths, we want to multiply that by 8. Now, in order to multiply a fraction by a whole number, it's often useful to make the whole number into a fraction itself. And we can do that by placing a 1 in the denominator. Now, we could go through and multiply these two fractions together, simply multiplying the numerators together and then multiplying the denominators together. However, it's probably best to try to simplify this before we do the multiplication to make our numbers a little bit more manageable. We know that 8 goes into 8 once, and we also know that 8 goes into 24 3 times. So we can simplify this problem by using this cross-simplification method. Now the numbers are much easier. We can multiply 16 times 1 to get 16 in the numerator, and then multiply 3 times 1 to get 3 in the denominator. So in order to make 8 bows, we need 16 thirds yards of ribbon. Let's look at another problem. At this point, we have an improper fraction as our number of yards. What we could do now is change this to a mixed number. In order to make this into a mixed number, we take 16 and divide it by 3. So 16 divided by 3, well, 3 goes into 16 5 times with a remainder of 1. So our remainder will go in the top of a fraction, and we'll use our divisor down below. And so 16 thirds yards of ribbon is equivalent to 5 1/3 yards of ribbon. Okay, let's look at another example. A welder needs a piece of 1/2-inch pipe 18 3/4 inches long. She has a piece of pipe that is 29 1/8 inch long. How much must she cut off from the longer piece? Well, let's draw a diagram to help us solve this problem. If we think about a piece of pipe that is 29 and 1/8 inches long, we're trying to determine how much we should cut off of this piece of pipe in order to make it 18 3/4. So what we're looking to determine is how much to take off to have a piece of pipe 18 3/4 inches long. So in order to determine this amount, we will subtract 18 34 inches from the 29 1/8 inches. That will tell us how much to cut off of this pipe. So we want 29 1/8 minus 18 3/4. Now we notice right away here that our fractions have different denominators. So it would probably be to our advantage to create common denominators here, and it looks like 8 would be our common denominator. So this problem is equivalent to 29 1/8 minus 18 6/8. Now, in order to do this subtraction, we run into a problem when we're looking at the fractions themselves. We're trying to subtract 6 from 1, which cannot be done unless we regroup and borrow from the 29. We know that 29 is equivalent to 28 plus 1. 28 plus 1. And we also have 1/8. We also, in the denominator, we have 18 6/8. Now, 1 can be rewritten as 8/8. And if we combine that 8/8 with our 1/8, we'll have 9/8. And that will allow us to subtract the 6/8. So 28 9/8 minus 18 6/8 gives us 10 3/8. And so that is the amount of pipe that will need to be cut off from the longer piece. And looking at our diagram, that seems to make sense. Starting with 29, we want to go down to 18. That's approximately 10. So it looks like our answer is good. Let's look at a third example. A student's tuition was $2,100. A loan was obtained for 6/7 of the tuition. How much was the loan? Well, in mathematics, often the word of indicates multiplication. So we're trying to determine what 6/7 of the $2,100 is. So 6/7 of 2,100 can be expressed as 6/7 times 2,100. Now, here again, we're multiplying a fraction times a whole number. So we will make this second value also a fraction, and now try to reduce. Well, we know 7 goes into 7 once. We know 7 goes into 2,100 300 times. Right? It goes into 7 3 times, and we have 2 placeholder zeros after that. Now this makes the multiplication much easier. We multiplied the numerators together. 6 times 300 is 1,800. And in the denominator, we simply have 1 times 1, so we don't have to put that in. And so our final value for how much the loan was is $1,800. Let's look at one more, but I'd like you to try it this time. A sporting goods manufacturer requires 3/5 yards of fabric to make a pair of soccer shorts. How many shorts can be made from 24 yards of fabric? Give this a try, and then we'll go through it together. Okay, let's take a look at this problem. So we know that it takes 3/5 yards of fabric to make a single pair of soccer shorts. We want to know how many shorts can be made from 24 yards of fabric. In order to do this, we would take the total amount of fabric that we have, 24 yards, and divide it by the amount of fabric to make one pair of soccer shorts. So 24 divided by 3/5. Now, here again, we have a whole number and a fraction, so let's make them both fractions by placing the 24 over 1. And now, if we are going to divide two fractions, we can invert the second fraction and multiply these values together. So this expression is equivalent to 24 over 1 times 5 over 3. Now again, we look to see if we can do some simplification before we multiply, and it does look like we can. 3 divides into 3 once. 3 also divides into 24 8 times. Now we multiply straight across. 8 times 5 is 40, and 1 times 1 gives us 1, which would simplify to just 40 pairs of shorts. So hopefully you got that same answer. If not, check your work and see where you might have made a small error, and I will see you next time.